Coming up on a special 50th anniversary edition of American Black Journal, we're going to have an in-depth conversation with filmmaker Stanley Nelson about his latest documentary on historically black colleges and universities. From the early struggles for higher education to today's campuses, it's the first film to tell the story of HBCUs. American Black Journal starts right now.
American Black Journal is funded by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first.
How does diversity bring energy to us all? At DTE Energy, we believe that it's the contributions of all that build great communities. As a company, we grow stronger by welcoming the unique perspectives of everyone. As community members, we support our state's broad culture and heritage. From working closely with women and minority-owned suppliers to embracing our local cultures, DTE Energy is powering diversity. The DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public Television. Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
As a leader in innovation, Ford is committed to making people's lives better through social mobility. Through our community programs, Ford is providing opportunities and access that help people succeed and realize their dreams. Sometimes it's as basic as providing a warm meal to a child so they won't be hungry at school and can learn. Sometimes it's about job training for adults to gain economic independence. Whatever your dreams, Ford is committed to helping you achieve them. Ford, driving a brighter future in our community.
Funding for this program is also provided by the Kresge Foundation.
Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm Stephen Henderson. Tell Them We Are Rising is the newest documentary by award-winning filmmaker Stanley Nelson. The film takes a look at the important role of historically black colleges and universities in this nation's culture and identity. The documentary aired earlier this year here on PBS, and a special screening took place at the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History. American Black Journal contributor Marlowe Stoudamire sat down with Nelson to talk about the film and the rich history of HBCUs.
Filmmaking is really hard. Making any kind of film is really hard. You know, I think the one thing, I try to say to people, it's like writing a book, So you write one good book, you write a book, it's really good. Right. Does that mean the next book you write is going to be any good? No, it's each one is different. So a lot of times, I live, and I work off of fear, because I'm not sure. I'm trying to, I'm making, a film about black colleges, There has never been one. There may never be another one, at least for a while, there won't be. I'm making a film about the Black Panthers, Emmett Till, I feel like, there's ancestors sitting on my shoulder saying, "Don't mess this up, Stanley."
Right.
Don't mess this up.
When you mention those films, the first thing that comes to my mind is Stanley didn't do it. Who would have told those stories? And I wonder about the barriers and the challenges that you had to overcome to even do that. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, it's funny because a lot of times, people will talk about these subjects like they're hard subjects, or that, there's somehow, I've taken on some, but to me, these are just great, interesting stories. What's more, fascinating than the Black Panthers,
Right.
That's all you got to say is, here's a film on the Black Panthers. You want to go see it? Nobody's going to say no, No, I don't think I want to see that. I want to see the new Star Wars movie. These are not difficult subjects to me. They're films that I really want to make. I think that, when I made the film on Madam C.J. Walker, $2 in a Dream, it took me 7 years to get the film made, you know, and after the film, you know, aired and it was on TV, and I was like, okay, now I made it, you know, and the next film took me 7 years to make again, you know, and I realized that, you know, when you go into these projects, you don't know how long it's going to take. So for me, it's really essential that it's something that's important to me. Yeah. You know, that I'm working on subjects that I feel are important, because it might take me 7 years to get the film done. It might take me 10 years to get the film done. Telling Rising, we were thinking about that film for years. You know, we probably thought about the film for 5 or 6 years, and then another couple of years to raise the money, and then another couple of years in production. So, you know, those films take a long time. So, you know, I don't look at them as like difficult films. I mean, I think they're big stories. They're stories about, you know, us as African Americans. They're stories about, you know, this country, this nation. They're stories about this world that I think should be important to everybody.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I remember we were talking earlier before we came in here, and I told you when I first saw the film, I didn't want it to stop. I wanted it to keep going. And the first thing that came to my mind is that, you know, I wonder what inspired him to pick this topic. Because there's a lot of topics, right? What was so unique about this topic that you had to tell this story?
Well, I think there's a number of things, you know. I think, you know, the easy answer is my parents both went to HBCUs. My mother went to Talladega, my father went to Howard. You know, if it wasn't for HBCUs, they would have never gone to college. You know, it was funny because, you know, somebody was talking earlier and you know, saying this person went to an HBCU, this person went to HBCU, this person. But if you look at before 1965, everybody went to HBCUs. You know,
it was the only option, right?
There was no other place to go.
Right.
You know, like I say, you know, like Harvard might have had 2, Yale might have had 2, and Oberlin might have had 5. But that was about it. You know, there was no other place to go. And so everybody went to HBCU. So, you know, I thought it was a really important story. I am kind of drawn to stories about institutions and movements rather than films about, you know, the great man or great woman. You know, I just think that that to me is just, you know, more exciting to do films about, you know, institutions or movements, you know, like Freedom Summer, Freedom Rides. You know, Garvey is a film about Garvey, but it's really a film about the Garvey movement. The Black Panthers, of course, and Telomere Rising. You know, we've had few institutions that have sustained us. I did a film called The Black Press, Soldiers Without Swords, about black newspapers. That was one of the institutions that we had that sustained us in a lot of ways. We've had the Black Church, and you know, we've had black colleges, and so I think it was one of the things that sustained us, you know, over the years. And one of the differences between African Americans and people of African descent in so many other countries around the world. You know, we've had black colleges and universities. We had this other system to educate us that no other country had.
You know, I like the way you describe the institutions and the movement, because they also help us define periods of time and help us track. You know, when I was growing up, I would hear that every time an elder in the black community dies, so does parts of our history. And you're tracking the history. My daughter's 9 years old. It's the first time she's ever seen some of this stuff. And so why is this not only important to black America, but the rest of the country, including specifically white America? Why should they be paying attention?
Well, one, I hope that it's an entertaining story. I mean, that's what we're trying to do. You know, we're trying to mainstream these stories. We're trying to make stories that are not, you know, take your medicine. You know, here's a black college. You know, take it. Let me open your mouth and stick that in there. You know, no, we're trying to tell stories that are entertaining. But these are stories about us. These are stories about you know, what made this country. You know, in a way, this film is the story of history of the United States, but told through this lens of black colleges. You know, I think that's what's important. You know, what's important to us. I mean, what's important to us just can't be, you know, our little neighborhood. You know, who we are. You know, and I think, you know, look, how many films do we watch about white folks?
A lot.
you know. I mean, that's why we're flocking to see the Black Panther, because like this first time, you know, we've had a movie about us. You know, and where we have a black director, and you know, we're not going to die in the first reel or the last. You know.
Somebody coming out on top. Right.
There's a chance that we might actually come out on top.
Right.
You know? So I you know, so. just like we see film, and we will continue. We will continue to see films about white folks, and and I think we don't go, oh, I'm going to see a movie about white people. I'm going to Star Wars. Well, some of us do, but
right.
so I think it's important that that we see films, all different kinds of films.
I agree, and I think there's entertainment value, but this film brought up some serious points, and when I found out we were going to have this conversation, I started talking to people, and a lot of people, brought some interesting topics to me, and I wanted to unpack some of those because I think I wanted to bring some other perspectives to the table. And one of the perspectives is some people may argue that HBCUs may not necessarily be needed anymore, right? Because they were needed then. And do we still need them? Are they relevant? Can small colleges with different business models and smaller bottom lines survive? And why should we care? So how do you respond to that? Because you had a lot packed into that.
Right. Well, I mean, I think one, so many of black colleges and universities are really, viable institutions. It's almost like, we talk about them sometimes like, it's like those Booker T. Washington pictures, with a guy on the roof with a hammer and a nail and some boards,
right.
Building these, schools. I mean, I just was at, did a tour of black colleges. I was at FAMU. It's got 8,000 students. My son just started at Georgetown. FAMU is the same size as Georgetown. We all heard of Georgetown. Nobody's saying, should Georgetown? Should we do away with Georgetown?
Right.
Georgetown is a Catholic university. Should we do away with Catholic universities? Hey, that's a good idea. Let's just do away with Catholic universities. We have Jewish universities. Let's do away with them. So, people aren't asking that question. I think also, until we have a country where the playing field is even for every kid going into first grade, through, school, through junior high, through high school. Until we have that, then we need black colleges and universities. In some ways, so many of them serve the same function that they always served, which is to take people, the function that they serve for my father,
right,
which is to take them out of poverty and move them up, into a viable, middle class life. And that's what they do. They also are very nurturing institutions, which is very different.
Right, the young lady talked about being somewhere where she was the majority.
At my high school, I was a token black girl. That was something very hard for me. You're either the ratchet black ghetto person, or you're the exception. You're the high-achieving, excellent. That's what you are. And I'm tired of those boxes. I don't want to be one thing or the other. I want to be me. I want to have the opportunity to discover myself. The sandals go in pockets together. I do believe that going to an HBCU is going to be a safe space. Yeah. Somewhere where I can be free to be completely myself. I can be black. I can have curly hair. I can be smart. I can be whatever I want to be. When I walk on campus, the excitement is unreal. I love the stroll teams that go around, chanting for their dorm. I love the step teams that they have. And they all look like you. Oh, they all look like you. It's so good.
I actually was outside the auditorium when they said that, and I could hear people laugh, when she said, they look like you.
Right.
Oh, they look like you. Because, we all know what that means. I was at a screening, a couple of weeks ago. It was a screening, it was mostly white folks. And I said, how many people in here have ever been in a room where you're the only white person in the room? And like one person raised their hand. Okay, so how many black people in here have been in the room where they're the only black people? Oh, everybody! Surprise, surprise.
And when you see one, you get that nod and you feel good. I see you, brother.
Surprise, surprise, surprise. So I mean, there's also that function that they serve, which is, they are our only safe black intellectual space. That's why, Martin Luther King went to an HBCU. That's why the Freedom Summer, Freedom Rides, started at HBCU. That's why the sit-ins started at HBCUs. That's why Black Lives Matter took hold, in a lot of ways at HBCUs, because, it's a place where, young black people can sit together and talk about their lives. And nobody's like, why are all those black people sitting around talking to each other? There's none of that. You know, also it's a place where, you know that you succeed or fail because of your intellect. And, you know, it's not because of your color. Mm-hmm. You know, it's not because of your color. Let me just add to that real quick. Because, you know, one of the most insidious things about racism is the vast majority of times you don't know, right? You don't know why you failed the class. You don't know why you didn't get the job. You don't know why you didn't get the apartment. You don't know these things. And what happens is, you know, you either, you know, build a wall around yourself to deal with it, or you end up like the brother on the street, you know, talking to yourself. Because you don't know.
It's a thin line.
Right. But when you're at a black college, one thing you do know, that it's not because you're black.
It's not that.
It's not because you're black.
You know, I want to go back into the film and dig into a part that was really profound for me when I was watching it the first time with my wife. And it was your assessment of Booker T. Washington and the comparison in ideology and thinking between him and W.E.B. Du Bois.
Booker T. Washington appealed to Northern industrialists for pragmatic reasons. They were seeking after a labor force. And he basically offered the proposition of an educated black labor force, but not too educated and not too pushy.
History is to note two Washingtons, one white, the other black, both fathers of their people. Andrew Carnegie.
As his ideology becomes the only ideology, there's not enough room, it seems, for lots of different ideas about how to save the race. That becomes a problem for other black leaders. They want to have their voice at the table as well.
There is among educated and thoughtful colored men in all parts of the land a feeling of deep regret, sorrow, and apprehension at the wide currency and ascendancy which Mr. Washington's theories have gained. Mr. Washington's program practically accepts the alleged inferiority of the Negro race. W.E.B. Du Bois.
W.E.B. Du Bois is probably the most educated American, black or white. He has gone to Fisk University, he has gone to Harvard, and then studied abroad in Germany. Du Bois believes with education, you gain freedom, you gain independence.
The Du Bois vision calls for expansive higher education and for thousands of African Americans to go to college, to become educated, and to be fighters for freedom and equality. Between Washington and Du Bois, they were so fundamentally different in terms of vision, so fundamentally different in terms of the purpose of education, that there was no way to reconcile the two.
It made me wonder, you know, about today. Is that contrast of thinking still here? And you know, where you were taking us as a filmmaker with that and how we should be thinking about that today.
You know, I'm not sure. One of the most surprising things for me, you know, with this film and like touring the film around and going, you know, to black colleges and black audiences is how much, you know, back and forth we've had about our portrayal of Booker T. Washington. You know, and until finally, you know, as we were getting near the end of the tour, I was getting mad, and I just said, look, I stand by what I said in the film. I really don't want to talk about it. Yeah. You know, if you want to go back to the days of Booker T, if you want to argue that Booker T was right, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. Booker T was very plain in what he said. It wasn't like, you know, you could make excuses for it and say, oh, he was in Alabama and that's why he had to do it. But it doesn't matter. You know, it doesn't matter why you do things. It matters what you do.
And it happened.
Yeah.
And that's history, right? So I'm glad you said that, because there are a lot of beautiful anecdotes throughout the film. What was your favorite story that was lifted up?
You know, I like that moment where that girl says they look like you, or they look like you. I mean, I love that moment because it's just a subtle moment, and you know, it's like you either get it or you don't, you know. And I mean, there's just a moment where they're talking about Charles Hamilton Houston and Thurgood Marshall going to the South, and where the guy says, you know, they had a still camera, a typewriter, and they had a movie camera. And it just clicks in. It's just like this moment, you know. It's just little moments like that, you know. We cut to the footage, and you see this footage that they actually shot, you know, down in the South, in the Deep South.
They are charged by the NAACP with documenting the conditions in which Black children go to school in the southern states. Charles Hammond Houston was a big techie. Anything that came out, the new technology that came out, he wanted to have it. And in Charles Hammond Houston's car, they have a typewriter, a camera, and a film camera. This was their first exposure to the conditions deep in Georgia, in northern Florida, in Alabama. They'd not seen that before. Houston and Marshall were able to film white students on the buses going to school. And then they were able to contrast that by showing Black students walking to school.
You know, film is made up of little moments. It's not like, you know, big moments. It's not like we're gonna have, you know, the Black Panther flying down from come down. You know, it's made out of little moments, and they hopefully add up to something.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important, you know, to look back at history. You know, the theme of our Project 67 was looking back to move forward. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think that that's something that you're helping us do. You're grounding us in that history. One of my frat brothers I talked to, when he found out I was interviewing, he said, please integrate this question. This was a great question. I want everyone to think about this. He said, how do I overcome the stigma of HBCUs being viewed as lesser of academic institutions than predominantly white institutions? I've been fighting my entire career to justify my education coming from an HBCU. I'm an engineer, and I struggle with that every day.
I hear you, you know, but on some level, who cares? You know what I mean? You cannot live your life like that. You know, one of the first jobs I got out of film school, you know, I got a job as a production assistant, and I was working this job, and then I was looking through the files or something, and I found out that this was a job that was held for a minority person, you know. And at first I was pissed, you know. I was like, oh, what, you know? And then I was like, when they gave me my paycheck, I was like, yeah, you know, I'm getting paid. I'm getting a chance to work in film, to do what I want to do, you know, and fine. You know, I'm glad I'm here, and I'm not gonna, you know, stress about that, about why they hired me. You know, I'm just gonna make sure that they're never sorry they hired me, you know, and that they promote me on and I get to do what I want to do here. I can't be bothered by that kind of stuff, and I don't think you can be bothered. You know, Black people that went to HBCUs, you know what those institutions mean and what they mean to you. Mm-hmm. And I found that, you know, traveling around the country, you know, there's this whole network, and there's a lot of HBCU graduates who do very, very, very well. You know, very well. You know, and there's studies that say that they do better than anybody else. You know, there's studies that say they do better than anybody else, and partially it's because of not only, you know, the what you learn. You know, it's not just ABC 2 + 2, but it's what you learn about who you are, and what you learn about your history, and what you learn about the pride, you know, and what you learn from that nurturing when, you know, people, you know, who've been through the same thing as you, you know, your professors, you know, look at you and say, you know, you can do it.
Great film and great discussion. For more information on the documentary, visit hbcurising.com. And you can see Marlowe's entire interview with Stanley Nelson at AmericanBlackJournal.org. That's our program for today. Thanks for watching. Make sure you connect with us on Facebook and on Twitter. We'll see you next time.
As American Black Journal looks ahead at the next 50 years, we want to hear from you, the viewers. Tell us what you think of this program and what you'd like to see on future episodes. Visit AmericanBlackJournal.org to take a quick survey and share your opinion. Thank you.
American Black Journal is funded by the W.K. Kellogg Foundation, a partner with communities where children come first.
How does diversity bring energy to us all? At DTE Energy, we believe that it's the contributions of all that build great communities. As a company, we grow stronger by welcoming the unique perspectives of everyone. As community members, we support our state's broad culture and heritage. From working closely with women and minority-owned suppliers to embracing our local cultures, DTE Energy is powering diversity. The DTE Energy Foundation is a proud sponsor of Detroit Public Television. Masco Corporation is proud to manufacture innovative and environmentally friendly products for the home. Delta faucets, craft-made in Merillat cabinets, and Behr brand paints have all been designed with you in mind. Masco and its family of companies, serving Michigan communities since 1929.
As a leader in innovation, Ford is committed to making people's lives better through social mobility. Through our community programs, Ford is providing opportunities and access that help people succeed and realize their dreams. Sometimes it's as basic as providing a warm meal to a child so they won't be hungry at school and can learn. Sometimes it's about job training for adults to gain economic independence. Whatever your dreams, Ford is committed to helping you achieve them. Ford, driving a brighter future in our community.
Funding for this program is also provided by the Kresge Foundation.